Robert J. Conley coming to you live. I also want to say coming to you live from the Super Bowl. All right. I can't help it. I was born that way. I was born this way. I can't help it. So when you're a parent, that's the last thing you want to hear your misbehaving child say. If you're an employer, you don't want to hear it either. But one of the keys to enjoying life, to being an effective leader, effective manager, is understanding what you can and can't fix. And what we know, what we've known for 100 years, Carl Jung kicked it off, and subsequent instruments have pretty much confirmed that there are things we're born certain ways. And so, it's not nurture or nature, it's nurture and nature. We are born with certain intrinsic aspects of our personality in place. And understanding what we can and cannot control is really imperative to being an effective, happy human being. So I'm going to give you a little overview through the lens of the Big Five personality instrument. Now, the Myers-Briggs typology and the DISC instrument were both came about around in the 40s, 50s kind of era. And then the Big Five, I believe, work was started on it in the 60s. And part of everybody's dancing around the same stuff, in spite of what each person or each person who uses these instruments might tell you. Yeah, each one has strengths and weaknesses, but they are all dancing around the same thing. And so, with the Big Five, it refers to five components of personality, and the proponents of the Big Five assert that they are the only scientifically verified instrument, and it's the only one that goes based on observation. And I'm not going to dispute that. I'm just going to tell you that in my experience, all three instruments have their place, and all three instruments being the Myers-Briggs typology, the DISC instrument, and the Big Five instrument, all three have their time and place and are of use. So, first component of the Big Five, number one of the five, is agreeableness. And agreeableness refers just to what we're talking about. It's, are you a get along to go along person, or are you a dominating person? Like, so example, and just like I'll bring up, I guess it'll be kind of haphazard, but I'll bring up little comparisons to DISC. So DISC labels this dominance in its instrument, and the Big Five inventors just decided to start with the other word, which is agreeableness. They're kind of at two opposite ends of a polarity. And so agreeableness is the one that Big Five uses, and so it's it's like a measure of compassion, of considerate. How considerate are you? How warm are you? A favorite word today is empathetic, empathic. Agreeableness. Part of it is that element is compassion, and the other one is politeness. And it's just really just fundamental, courtesy. And so, the extreme is I guess the really public examples would be Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And I always choose them because there's one from each political party, and I'm trying not to make this political, but they're both very abrupt, gruff people, and so they would score low in politeness. Although I guarantee you, one-on-one meeting with either one of them in private, you would probably find a completely polite person. But their public personas are such that they don't exhibit that. And as a group, women are more likely to about twice as likely to be assessed as agreeable than men. That's as a group. And so again, it's not, you can't just one off this. It's just as a group, if you took 100 women, probably about 60% of them would be middle to high agreeableness, and only about 30 or so percent of men would be high or medium to high in agreeableness. All right, number two, conscientiousness. And conscientiousness, again, just like it sounds. And DISC actually uses the exact same word, conscientiousness. But conscientiousness, the big five, breaks it into industriousness. It's really just how much are you getting work done? And this is a really important one when we're trying to when you're in a leadership position and understanding who's going to get the job done. And again, it shows up early. I mean, it's a lack of industriousness, excuse me, will usually prevent someone from even moving up the second rung of a hierarchical ladder. Um, it industriousness, people who make like a partner at a big 8 accounting firm or now big 4 accounting firm, they're really first of all, they're really high in conscientiousness to begin with in both aspects, both industriousness and orderliness. Um, but whether it's the accounting firm, law firm, big organizations, you're just going to find that industriousness and getting the job done and working hard is a real strong indicator of how well someone's going to do in a big organization. And orderliness is really, can you handle mess? Can you handle chaos? And so in that component, actually, what we find is that entrepreneurs are tend to be lower in orderliness um, and can tolerate the chaos of a new organization and of growing something from scratch, whereas the people that thrive in big bureaucratic organizations are going to have a high need for orderliness all along. All right, next one, extroversion, and in the Myers-Briggs typology, that gets called extroversion. In DISC, to a certain degree, it gets called influence, and it's not a completely clean translation, but just for reference, DISC kind of looks at it as influence. And so extroversion, again, a big five, looks at enthusiasm, how excitable, how just, well, enthusiastic, how enthusiastic is a person. But the other part of extroversion is assertiveness and being comfortable of taking charge and, uh, also having the capacity to, um, to lead, to be captivating, to have people just feel your influence and follow you. And, it's an interesting thing because there are many introverted leaders, but we don't see them. They're always behind the scenes, almost always behind the scenes, and typically terribly uncomfortable at public speaking. And so a lot of times you'll have the business, especially when businesses start, there's an extrovert and an introvert. And the extrovert gets labeled the leader, but there's a decent chance that there is someone behind the scenes who is really making all the wheels turn at the right speeds and in the right way, in the same direction. So that's extroversion. Next one is neuroticism, and neither Myers-Briggs nor DISC flat out measure that, but we see it in just there are different ways to look at this. So anyway, neuroticism breaks down to withdrawal, and what that is their anticipatory anxiety, dealing with the unknown. Is there a negative cloud over or a positive cloud? And as I say that, you can see again that entrepreneurs are going to, for the most part, be lower in neuroticism. And I don't want to say I don't want to paint a picture that says, oh well, in a big organization they'll be high. No, that's not the case. But what you'll find is that if you, it, the high people high in neuroticism really do have a hard time with that future look and having anxiety over that issue. And then the other component of neuroticism is volatility and how unpredictable is a person. Are they going to melt down? Are they going to blow up? What's that going to look like? And again, in big stable organizations, that is not a welcome component. It's actually not welcome pretty much anywhere. There are places where it can be channeled. And so, again, in startups, Steve Jobs would be someone who would be classified as high in volatility. And, well, I'm not going to go into that anyway. So that's neuroticism. And then the last component is openness to experience. And openness People who score high in openness have a really rough time with routine. So again, we're going to find that entrepreneurs, for the most part, score high in openness, and big organization people low in openness. And really low in openness means you have a capacity to just get that job done day in and day out. It's not exactly the same as industriousness, but if you combine low openness and high industriousness, you've got a great worker. You've got someone who's just going to bang the work out day in and day out without distraction. And then the other component of openness refers to intellect and to an embracing of new ideas and just an interest in the abstract and in the theoretical. And you know, interestingly, again, this component when it's real high is going to be somewhat detrimental to effectively doing repetitive work. And um, I just realized I may have contradicted myself there, but anyway, at any rate, uh, high intellect will typically mean that there's just this yearning for constantly learning new things. And so the ability to do repetitive work is going to be lower than someone who scores lower in intellect. And intellect in this sense does not refer to IQ. It you can have a very mediocre IQ and still be very interested, probably not so much in abstract ideas because there is that correlation, but an interest in new things and in new ideas, new ways of doing things. And so there's a relationship, but it's not necessarily a correlation. So those are the five elements of the big five: agreeableness, conscientiousness, extroversion, openness, neuroticism. And I bring these up. You don't even have to be you don't have to memorize this stuff. Just well, memorize those 5 words. But when you're finding something challenging, when you're finding a work situation be challenging, when whatever, something in life, if you start looking through that lens, and then you can start examining it, and quite honestly, this is where a lot of my coaching is with people, is what can you change and what can't you change? Is this ingrained in you or not? And there are situations where you want to make the decision of, well, I'm going to double down, I'm going to work my tail off to get better at this. But there also is a good body of this where it's useful to understand that that's just how you are. You can't help it. You were born that way, and you need to adjust the work you're doing, the approach you're taking, the work environment, whatever. You need to adjust other things to continue or to start being an effective human being. And that's where the payoff is in all of this material, is understanding what you can and can't fix about yourself and about others, and realizing that many times the solution is external. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. All right. I'm Robert J. Conley. I hope this helped. See you next time.